It was the worst pain I've ever felt.
She would get dizzy. She would have headaches.
One of the doctors said we may be looking at renal failure.
We did not want to lose this baby.
I wasn't quite sure if my wife would make it through the night.
Hearing the heartbeat drop like that and then nothing, it was the most terrifying thing in the whole world.
Next, two medical mysteries that defy the experts. When Allie Isaacson passes out on the soccer field, her parents chalk it up to a simple case of exhaustion. But nothing could have prepared them for the harrowing series of events to follow.
It escalated so quickly into, this is an emergency. I was just kind of thinking, what could she possibly have to tell me that she can't say in front of my parents?
Then, in the 26th week of her pregnancy, Molly Bigford is forced to face a terrifying reality.
Losing my wife is not something that I could deal with.
It was definitely the worst day of my life.
When illness strikes, we look to doctors to give us answers. But what if they can't? For these unlucky patients, diagnosis is a mystery. In the summer of 2005, 14-year-old Allie Isaacson was enjoying a carefree life in Greensboro, North Carolina. She liked school and spending time with her family. But above all, Allie loved playing soccer.
I played on the team in middle school, and I played on a traveling team, and I was just always involved with soccer.
She played defense. Allie's a pretty aggressive soccer player.
But as practice for the fall season begins in August, Allie, usually a bundle of energy, finds herself struggling.
I would get dizzy. I would just get exhausted. I couldn't run. I couldn't do anything.
Allie seemed to me to be having issues with heat. She would get red in the face. She would get dizzy. She would have headaches.
Everyone gave me cold washcloths, and eventually I was fine. I cooled down.
At first, Allie's parents aren't overly concerned. They assume that she's just overdoing it. But then, during a game in late August, they can hardly believe their eyes when their once strong daughter begins to fall apart.
We were playing our rivals, and it was really hot. Everyone was giving everything they had. And after the game, I just collapsed. I just kind of fell down on the ground.
I must have been turning around talking to somebody. I looked back, and she had fainted. She was just really having the classic symptoms of heat issues, and it just caused me some concern.
Worried, the Isaacsons consult their pediatrician. But she assures them that there's nothing wrong with Allie.
She said get plenty of fluids, drink a lot of water, and try to monitor her during the game to see if she was getting overly tired.
I would probably drink 2 or 3 liters before games. I would chug water bottles because I knew what was coming if it was hot outside.
As summer turns into fall, Allie's strength begins to return, and she finishes the season in fine form. But when her team enters a tournament the following May, Allie finds herself playing once again in 90-degree heat.
1, 2, 3, twisters!
The girls played until they were really hot, and I was very concerned about Allie. I had talked to the coach and said, you know, she is, in my mind, very red in the face.
I was really tired after 2 games in the sun. I knew that I was red, but for the most part, I was okay.
After the doubleheader, Allie skips dinner and invites some friends over to play pool at her house. But it isn't long before the night takes an unsettling turn.
I remember sitting there thinking to myself, why do my legs hurt so much? This is really painful. It was kind of like somebody was slowly pulling them apart. I've never felt anything like that before. I would get up whenever I had to. I would shoot the ball, and then I'd wobble back over to the couch and just sit down. And I was thinking, please don't make me get up again. I don't want to move. I just want to sit here, and I want this to go away, and I want this to be over.
Allie does her best to grin and bear it. But by the time her friends leave, the pain has gotten so bad, she's unable to walk.
It wasn't just I'm sore from a soccer game. It was I can barely move my muscles without shooting pains just going up my leg. So I used my arms to crawl. I got down the first staircase and I would rest. And then I'd get across the kitchen and I'd rest. And then by the time I got to the 14-step staircase, I was kind of holding onto the rails. It was the worst pain I've ever felt. It was horrible. I think I finally fell asleep at about 5:30. I woke up at 7, and it hadn't gotten better.
Allie said, Mom, I'm really sore. And I said, well, of course you are. You're out of shape and you just played 2 soccer games. She said, no, I mean, I'm really sore. I don't think I can get out of bed.
My legs were really wobbly. They were really unstable. I would hold on to stuff just for support, and the pain relievers didn't help.
Realizing that Allie hasn't eaten since the previous afternoon, Jill brings her some food. But an hour later, Allie starts vomiting.
She just felt nauseous and felt cruddy. I thought she had the flu.
Allie manages to get a few hours of shut-eye. But when she wakes up, she's taken aback by a new and highly disturbing symptom.
I went to the bathroom, and I looked in the toilet. My urine was coffee-colored. It was really dark. And I was kind of thinking, what is going on inside my body that made this?
We were just concerned and confused about what was going on. We thought, let's just get her in the best hands possible.
Alarmed, Mark and Jill drive Allie to the nearest emergency room, where doctors waste no time running a battery of tests. But as they wait for the results, a new and painful symptom begins to emerge.
I started crying because my back hurt so badly, and so my dad started giving me a back massage and just saying, is it really that bad? Is it really that bad? And it was. The doctor came in, and I think I was crying, and she said, what's wrong? And I told her my back hurts, and on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 9. And so they put me on morphine.
The idea that she would have the level of pain that required morphine, I just felt terrible for her. I just felt that it was awful that she was in that much pain.
The Isaacsons can't imagine what could be causing Allie's constellation of symptoms. But they're even more bewildered when an hour later, the doctor asks them to leave the room so she can speak to Allie in private.
I was just kind of thinking, what could she possibly have to tell me or ask me that she can't say in front of my parents? I was 15. I didn't really have anything to hide.
Following an intense game of soccer in the blazing heat, 15-year-old Allie Isaacson is blindsided by an array of debilitating and bizarre symptoms: intense leg pain, vomiting, and dark brown urine. But after undergoing a series of tests in the hospital, the on-call doctor drops a bombshell. Allie is pregnant.
I just kind of looked at her. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, I'm not pregnant. I know I'm not pregnant. And so she said, okay, sometimes there is a false positive, but I'm gonna have to talk to your parents.
When she came out, she asked us if we knew if Allie had been sexually active.
Jill and Mark are sure that the doctor's mistaken, but there's no time to argue. Allie's extremely dehydrated, and it's imperative that they start her on an IV right away, for her own sake and for the baby's.
And the nurse had a little trouble getting the IV in because her veins were very collapsed.
I think we all thought that if we could get enough fluids going through her system, that would get her back to normal.
Then, an hour later, another series of tests comes back from the lab, and the results are nothing short of shocking. As it turns out, Allie isn't pregnant. Instead, she's suffering from a life-threatening syndrome called rhabdomyolysis, a condition in which muscle tissue breaks down into the bloodstream and clogs the kidneys.
I didn't know what rhabdo meant. I just knew she was having rhabdo. I didn't even know what it was short for.
I got very concerned at that point that we were sort of out of bounds on any knowledge that we had or any frame of reference that we had about what we were dealing with.
The degree of breakdown is measured by the amount of a muscle protein called creatine kinase, or CK, that's in the blood. CK levels are supposed to be at around 180, but Allie's are off the charts at 200,000.
It escalated so quickly into, this is an emergency, we need to get you upstairs, we need to admit you. I think now something might be seriously wrong with me.
One of the doctors said, we may be looking at renal failure. Those two words hit me like a ton of bricks.
The only way to stop the proteins from clogging Allie's kidneys is to flush them out with a near constant stream of fluids.
They said, we are going to put you on IV so that we're running 1 liter an hour through you. And I'm gonna have to wake you up every 4 hours to take your blood to see if your levels are going down.
And they were pushing fluids through her like crazy.
But after 48 hours of rigorous treatment, Allie's condition still hasn't improved. The Isaacsons are distraught, and the doctors are puzzled.
The doctor said this usually happens to marathon runners, serious athletes. Sometimes it happens to alcoholics and drug addicts, but I wasn't in any of the categories.
Finally, 4 exhausting days later, Allie's CK levels begin to drop, and she's discharged from the hospital. Jill and Mark are grateful that the crisis is over, but they're far from satisfied with the medical team's diagnosis, or lack thereof.
We didn't really get a good explanation of, well, what is this? What happened?
On doctor's orders, Allie takes it easy for the rest of the summer. But as fall approaches, so does the soccer season, and she's eager to get back on the field.
I thought just hydrate really well, just to take care of myself, and I thought that everything would return back to normal.
But in the middle of her 3rd game back, the bottom drops out all over again.
My muscles just started to cramp and ache again, and just the shooting pain went all the way up my leg. My muscles hurt a lot. I couldn't run, and I couldn't chase my mark, and I just stood there. And I immediately started crying. The same symptoms were there.
Horrified, Mark and Jill pack their daughter into the car and take her straight to the hospital. It's an all too familiar nightmare they'd hoped to never relive.
She said she couldn't walk, that her muscles had locked up. But I could see we were heading back into the same area that we had been in when we were in the hospital a few months earlier. I was just very concerned that here we go again.
As soon as they arrive at the emergency room, the medical team runs a blood test. It confirms that Allie's once again in rhabdomyolysis.
The doctor said your CK level this time is about 50,000, which is 1/4 of where it was before, which is a whole lot better. And they said, your kidney function is fine. You didn't do anything wrong. If we did everything right, then what's wrong?
Allie's condition can be corrected again by flushing the excess protein out of her system. But doctors still can't figure out what's causing her muscles to break down in the first place.
We couldn't really get a clear explanation from anyone as to what was going on. Just a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers.
Then, on Allie's 2nd day in the hospital, one of her doctors comes across an article that stops him dead in his tracks.
The on-call pediatrician said, I think I know what this is. And he handed me an article.
I just woken up and my mom handed me the article. She goes, does this sound familiar? And I looked at it, I said, this sounds exactly like what's happening.
For the 2nd time in 6 months, Allie Isaacson is at the hospital in danger of going into kidney failure. But this time, one doctor thinks he knows what's triggering the terrifying series of events. Still, his hunch can only be confirmed by a specialist. So 2 weeks later, Jill and Mark take Allie to the North Carolina Children's Hospital to see geneticist Muge Chalikolu.
When I first met Allie, I immediately thought she had a metabolic disorder. Your muscles are not normally supposed to break down. It's an indication that your muscles are not functioning properly.
And we went through as many incidents in her history as we could think of that had to do with muscle locking or that kind of pain.
Dr. Muge explains that when muscles break down, it's a clue that there's a problem with the body's metabolism, the process by which the body creates energy from food.
We just kind of started to piece the puzzle together, like, wow, everything just started to kind of come together.
Although Dr. Muge suspects Allie is suffering from a metabolic disease, she'll need to perform a specialized genetic test to know for sure. But she warns the Isaacsons it will be 6 to 8 weeks before the results come back. In the meantime, Dr. Muge instructs Allie to avoid any strenuous exercise.
Allie was hysterical. She would call me from school and say, Dr. Muge said 6 weeks. It's been 6 weeks. Call her right now, Mom. Call her right now and find out if the test results are back.
Finally, in February of 2007, the Isaacsons get the call they've been so anxiously waiting for.
Based on our blood testing, it was clear she had carnitine palmitoyltransferase 2.
Carnitine palmitoyltransferase 2 deficiency, or CPT2, is a condition in which the gene that enables the body to process fat into energy is missing. When the body needs energy, it makes it from the food we eat and our carbohydrate stores. Once those are depleted, the body moves on to the fat stores and turns them into energy. But Allie's body can't do this, so instead, it tries to convert protein located in the muscle tissue. In essence, the body begins to eat itself.
The body, to create energy, first uses carbohydrates, then fat. Allie is missing the compound that enables her to do so.
When the diagnosis came back as CPT2, I think I was more relieved than anything else that we had figured out something, that we knew what this condition was.
I was really excited. I was thinking there's a category that I fit into.
Dr. Muge explains to the family that the symptoms of CPT2 deficiency often begin to surface in adolescence.
She had multiple episodes of leg weakness with extensive exercise starting after 7th grade.
The weakness became acute when Allie exercised strenuously in the sun. But contrary to the Isaacsons' suspicions, heat was not the main problem. Allie's muscles began to break down after she exercised rigorously and went without food for prolonged periods, like the day she played 2 soccer games and skipped dinner.
Allie also had not eaten for quite a long time, and her muscles did not have energy, and this led to the attack. Allie was sore all over because her muscles had started to break down all over her body.
As Allie's body tried to convert the protein in her muscles to energy, high levels of proteins were released into her bloodstream, sending her into the dangerous state of rhabdomyolysis.
Rhabdomyolysis is a major symptom of CPT2. Allie experienced that twice and was hospitalized for both episodes. Rhabdomyolysis is very severe and can be life-threatening.
Allie's urine turned dark because the proteins entering the blood have a reddish pigment, and her kidneys were busy trying to filter them out in her urine. Her dehydration, brought on by the heat, made things worse. With less fluids in her system, her body had an even harder time flushing out the toxins.
If the kidneys stop filtering out the toxic waste products of the body generated on a daily basis, you can die.
I thought about the consequences. I thought, well, this could seriously affect her quality of life for a long time.
"15-year-old Allie Isaacson has just learned that she's suffering from carnitine palmitoyltransferase 2 deficiency, or CPT2, a dangerous disease that prevents her body from converting fat into energy.
If Allie had not been treated properly during her episode of muscle breakdown, she could have died.
There's currently no cure for CPT2, but fortunately it can be managed by following a strict diet low in fat and high in carbohydrates.
She needs energy for her cells to function properly. And the energy that she can take is from carbohydrates. She needs to consume between 1,500 to 1,800 calories per day. Close to 70% of her diet needs to be made up of carbohydrates.
Allie will also have to take a supplement that will help her body convert a small amount of fat into energy.
This is the vitamin replacing what she is lacking naturally.
But there's one sacrifice Allie will have to make, and it's more painful than any diet: giving up soccer.
It is difficult for Ali to sustain 90 minutes of running intensely on the soccer field with this condition. Ali's muscles need more energy than can be sustained through such rigorous exercise.
It was sad. I've been playing for about 11 years of my life, but I would rather be healthy than play soccer.
Though Allie's since come to terms with her condition, she can't help but wonder why it took so long to pinpoint what was wrong with her.
CPT2 is quite rare. It may be 1 in 100,000. For every patient that is diagnosed with this condition, there may be 10 that may not be diagnosed.
Today, Allie is a senior in high school and still learning how to live with CPT2.
It's kind of a challenge just because, there's so strict guidelines. I'm constantly thinking, how much fat have I eaten today?
I'm very hopeful about Ali's prognosis. I think that with proper treatment and follow-up, she will lead a normal, healthy life.
Next year, college beckons, and that will present new challenges for Allie and new worries for her parents.
She's 17 years old, and the idea of sending her to a dorm with college eating and sleeping and drinking and all that kind of thing is very scary.
We're trying to make sure that she can balance her lifestyle and enjoy her college experience, but not end up in the hospital again.
But Allie's journey to her diagnosis has also led her to a new sense of independence.
I feel like I have more control over my life now, just because I can control if I'm going to get sick or not. It's all up to me and the choices I make.
While Allie Isaacson's symptoms were impossible to ignore, Molly Bigford was living with an almost imperceptible condition, and it nearly cost her her life. After a storybook wedding in May of 2003, Molly and Jim Bigford settled down in Grand Rapids, Michigan, eager to start their lives together.
Jim and I really enjoyed being together and having our own lives and going out to dinner by ourselves.
But we knew that eventually, we were going to have kids.
They soon established themselves in jobs, Molly as a hospital dietitian and Jim in sales at a manufacturing company. Then in the fall of 2007, with some money saved and careers underway, they begin trying to have a baby. But over the next several months, Molly's periods become strangely irregular.
I really was starting to worry, what's wrong with me? Why does this have to happen now when I'm trying to get pregnant? It was just a really difficult time.
Concerned, she schedules an appointment with a local OBGYN, Dr. Beth Leary.
Molly was a healthy young woman who seemed to be having some difficulty getting pregnant. It is not unusual. There are many people who have problems becoming pregnant because of irregular menstrual cycles.
After performing a thorough exam, Dr. Leary assures Molly that everything seems normal. But when the results of her blood work come back a few days later, Molly tests positive for hypothyroidism, a condition in which the thyroid gland does not produce enough thyroid hormone. This can cause changes in a woman's menstrual cycle.
Whenever someone's trying to become pregnant, it's good to have their thyroid optimized. In Molly's case, she had a mild case of hypothyroidism, and so we gave her a small amount of thyroid hormone to normalize this.
Molly breathes a big sigh of relief, and when she returns for a checkup 3 months later, she gets some surprising news.
Dr. Leary walks in the room and tells me that I'm pregnant. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe I was pregnant.
When Molly told me that she was finally pregnant, it was one of the best feelings of my life.
5 weeks later, Molly goes in for a routine ultrasound. It's then that she sees her baby for the first time.
It was amazing. It was just like, okay, there's our baby.
It really made everything real for the first time. You could see a little blinking heartbeat.
But as Molly and Jim marvel at the image on the ultrasound, they can't help but notice that the technician looks concerned.
They had told us that the heart rate appeared a little slower than normal.
The normal range for a baby's heartbeat is 120 to 160 beats per minute. Molly's baby's heart is only beating at 105.
They had told us not to be concerned about that. It could be sleeping rates, it could be differences in development, but they did schedule us for a follow-up ultrasound shortly after.
The expectant parents are worried but hopeful. And a week later, they anxiously return for another imaging session.
We walked into the second ultrasound with the utmost excitement. I wanted to see how much bigger the fetus had become. I wanted to see that blinking heartbeat again. The tech was searching around on Molly, looking for the heartbeat.
Nothing could have prepared them for what would happen next.
It's definitely the worst day of my life.
Molly Bigford is in the middle of a seemingly routine ultrasound when suddenly her world's turned upside down. The technician is having trouble finding the baby's heartbeat.
I saw a shape, but I wasn't seeing any movement or anything like that on the screen, and that's when I started to get really worried.
And I remember the tech looked to Molly and said, "Just bear with me for a few minutes." And she continued searching and then confirmed that we had lost our child.
7 weeks into her pregnancy, Molly has miscarried her first baby. She and Jim are devastated.
So we hugged for a really long time and just cried, and it was a really, really difficult day. The doctor came to get us and took us into another room and just told us that it was not our fault, it's nothing that we did, and that we can try again in a couple months.
But as the months pass and Molly doesn't get pregnant, Jim begins to fear the worst.
I did think in the back of my mind that having children might not happen for us. That was never spoken between Molly and I, but this was definitely something that I thought about in private moments.
Molly quietly shares Jim's concerns, so a few months later when something does finally happen, it takes her by surprise.
This time I knew I was a little bit late and I had to go out and get a pregnancy test. I wasn't expecting anything. It was positive. Couldn't believe it.
Molly checks in with Dr. Leary and is ecstatic to hear her confirm that she's pregnant again. This time, the first trimester goes off without a hitch, and at 20 weeks, an ultrasound reveals that the baby is a boy.
As soon as Jim and I found out that we were having a boy, we immediately went out shopping for the blankets and the sheets and all the little boy clothes.
But at her next appointment, Dr. Leary discovers a troubling new development. The baby is very small for his age.
Molly's baby was in around the 24th percentile, which means that about 76% of the babies are larger than Molly's baby, and we worry that the baby is not growing well and getting the nutrients it needs to grow.
The doctor assured me there's all shapes and sizes of babies. We just happen to be in the lower, percentile. As long as we were under 10%, there was really nothing to be concerned about.
But Dr. Leary is worried when she checks Molly's blood pressure. It's 152/80, very high and potentially very risky during a pregnancy.
We're always looking at a patient's blood pressure because one of the complications of pregnancy can be preeclampsia.
The symptoms of preeclampsia are high blood pressure combined with protein in the urine. If left unchecked, the condition can be dangerous, sometimes even fatal for both mother and baby.
We worry about women developing seizures or strokes. It can cause the baby to grow more slowly and to have growth retardation. In any of these cases, we would end the pregnancy.
The good news is that Molly doesn't have any protein in her urine. But to be safe, Dr. Leary sends her home with strict instructions to check her blood pressure twice a day.
I didn't know what to think. Molly spent a lot of time in research on the internet, and she seemed not to be concerned about this. This was something that we could work through and still look forward with a positive outlook.
But 2 days later, Molly's blood pressure remains dangerously high.
So then at that point I was a little bit nervous. So I called those in to the OB nurse in the afternoon, and my OB called and told me to go ahead and head to triage.
This was becoming a situation that we needed to monitor quite closely, as there was risk to both Molly and to the baby.
Preeclampsia can develop fast and worsen quickly. But while Dr. Leary is running a battery of tests, Molly's blood pressure suddenly stabilizes.
All of her labs were normal, and so we were not able to diagnose severe preeclampsia. However, we were still worried that this may develop, as she was having a baby that was not growing well.
To keep Molly's blood pressure in check, Dr. Leary orders her onto light bed rest for the rest of her pregnancy. And at first, it seems to help.
Everything looked fine, my blood pressure was good.
In the middle of her third trimester, Molly and Jim go in for another ultrasound, more relaxed than they've been in weeks. But what Dr. Leary tells them next is nothing short of shocking.
Over the previous 2 to 3 weeks, it had decreased in size from the 24th percentile down to the 8th percentile. We knew that the rate of the baby's growth was decreasing rapidly.
They estimated that he was 3 pounds, 9 ounces.
All the red flags in the world came up in my mind then.
Alarmed, Dr. Leary explains that they're on the brink of a crisis. Molly's history of high blood pressure and the baby's small size suggests that preeclampsia is a real possibility. She warns the couple that she may have to induce the birth that night. Otherwise, both Molly and the baby could die.
The longer that a baby stays in the womb, the more chance it has for survival. However, there are times when a baby would do better outside of its mother.
My greatest fear was that we could lose this baby. I was concerned about Molly's health as well. Losing my wife is not something that I could deal with.
Dr. Leary immediately sends Molly to the ER for monitoring. If her blood pressure rises and protein is found in her urine, she'll have to induce labor. But at just 34 weeks, the baby would be premature and at risk for a number of different medical problems.
We consider 37 weeks to be full term. For patients with severe preeclampsia, we would deliver them at whatever stage was necessary for the life of the mother or for the health of the baby.
But after 3 intense hours, once again, everything stabilizes.
All of the testing that we did on the baby was reassuring. The baby was moving well inside of Molly. All of these encourage us to continue the pregnancy further.
I was relieved, definitely relieved, that they weren't going to induce me.
Molly is sent home again and is told to stay on strict bed rest to keep her blood pressure down.
We did not want to lose this baby. We wanted to keep it in utero as long as possible to help it grow.
Molly stays off her feet, and for the next few weeks, everything goes according to plan. Then, almost 1 month before the baby's due date, her water breaks.
36 weeks to the day, and at about 2:45 in the morning, I rolled over in bed, and there was a gush of water.
15 minutes later, Molly and Jim arrive at the hospital and are immediately taken to the delivery room. Dr. Leary is not working that night, so the on-call doctor is notified as Molly settles in.
For the first 10 minutes that we were in the labor and delivery room, everything was great. I looked at the heart rate monitor. The heart rate was high, 130s, clicking away like it was supposed to. And I took a little smile and said, here we go, I'm going to be a father very soon. Shortly after that, things started to go downhill.
As Jim watches the fetal monitor, the baby's heartbeat begins to plummet from 130 down to 60 beats per minute. Then, it flatlines. A few horrifying seconds later, it slowly begins to climb back up.
We were terrified. Hearing the heartbeat drop like that and then nothing, the most terrifying thing in the whole world.
Moments later, on-call Dr. Dominic Federico arrives on the scene.
I was disturbed when I walked in because the longer the heartbeat is down, you're more concerned about the condition actually worsening to the point where the baby doesn't come back.
With the baby's heartbeat faltering, Dr. Federico has no choice but to order an emergency cesarean section.
Nurses were running into the room. One nurse jumped onto the bed, and they started wheeling her out of the room. It was one of the most lonely times I've ever felt in my life. I wasn't quite sure if my son or my wife would make it through the night.
Four weeks before her due date, Molly Bigford is being wheeled into the operating room for an emergency C-section. Monitors have just shown that her baby's heart rate is weakening by the minute.
I was scared that I wasn't going to meet my baby. We got all the way to this point and he might not make it.
It was a pretty surreal experience. I heard Dr. Federico say, "Here comes the baby." At that point, I had to stand up and take a peek. And at that time, he had my son by his ankles and was pulling him out of my wife. And it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It's permanently etched in my head. I saw bright yellow rubber gloves, an umbilical cord, and a tiny, tiny little boy.
Molly and Jim named the baby Hudson. He's only 3 pounds, 10 ounces, and 16.5 inches long, well below the average of 7 pounds and 20 inches. But to Jim and Molly, he's perfect.
I was happy to see all the limbs were there, all the fingers were there. He looked like a beautiful boy.
I just remember not even really being able to see him because my eyes were so blurred with tears.
Almost immediately, the newborn is taken away and placed in an incubator in the neonatal unit. Then, just as Dr. Federico is about to sew up Molly's incision, he makes a shocking discovery.
I noticed that there was a very definite difference between the shape of Molly's uterus and a normal uterus, and it would be what you would call a unicornuate uterus.
A unicornuate uterus is a rare deformation of the female reproductive system that is caused by a genetic abnormality. Normally, the female fetus starts out with 2 uteruses, which ultimately merge into one. But in women like Molly, one of the 2 uteruses does not mature or fully grow. The result is a unicornuate uterus. Only half of Molly's uterus is developed, forming a single horn-like shape.
What happens during normal development before they're born is both uteruses come to the center and actually fuse. And hence you have a single vagina, a single cervix, a single uterine cavity, a single uterus with ovaries coming off either side.
But that wasn't the case for Molly.
I was definitely shocked when he told me that I had pretty much a half a uterus and 1 ovary. I didn't really know what to think at that point.
Dr. Federico actually had Molly's uterus in his hands and showed me where the rest of the uterus should be, where the other ovary should be.
Molly's uterus is only about half as big as normal, and Dr. Federico explains that its small size most likely led to the baby's premature birth.
A normal uterus is designed to expand to accommodate a growing fetus. A unicornuate uterus may not be able to expand enough to accommodate a normal growing pregnancy, and this may result in premature labor. In Molly's case, you could surmise that it may have been due to the baby running out of room.
Everything started to make sense. It was pretty obvious why he had had so much trouble getting bigger.
Dr. Federico called to tell me about the birth as he knew that I had been following Molly closely, and I was very surprised that Molly had a unicornuate uterus.
Dr. Leary explains that the condition is rare, but Molly can't help but wonder why it remained undiagnosed through so many checkups, ultrasounds, and exams.
I swore I remember them seeing 2 ovaries on some of my previous ultrasounds.
Ultrasounds are read in black and white, and there are many times when the appearance of bowel or other things in the area may have a similar appearance as an ovary. Many women don't find this out unless they're having troubles, or at the time of a normal C-section, we may encounter this and find out that their uterus is abnormally shaped.
But just when Molly thinks she's heard it all, Dr. Leary makes another startling disclosure. It's likely that Molly also has only one kidney. Because the reproductive system develops at the same time as the renal system, usually any abnormalities will occur in both. To find out for sure, Molly undergoes one more ultrasound.
She found the left kidney right away, and then she went to the right side and started looking for the kidney, and definitely took her a few minutes, and I was like, it's not there, is it? She's like, not that I can see.
As a fetus, Molly only developed half of each system, leaving her with a half a uterus and one kidney. However, the kidney seems to be functioning normally, and Dr. Leary doesn't expect it to cause any problems down the line.
In general, women with one kidney don't need any special treatment. They generally have normal functioning of the kidney and normal blood pressures.
Still, the doctors can't be sure if the early signs of preeclampsia were triggered as a result of Molly having just one kidney.
There may be a very small increased risk with a unicornuate uterus in women who have abnormalities with their kidneys.
Luckily, in Molly's case, the delayed diagnosis didn't make a difference in her health or her treatment.
Had we known about her unicornuate uterus before she got pregnant, I would have counseled her on the need for strict bed rest after a certain number of weeks. We would have talked about the increased risk of premature delivery and what that impact would have on the baby based on what age the baby was born. So in her case, we would have used a different diagnosis and a different rationale, but the recommendations would have been the same.
For Molly, the key question now is whether she can ever get pregnant again and carry a baby to term.
The problems that Molly had getting pregnant may or may not have been related to her problem with the uterus. I explained to Molly that she can have more children. The fact that she got this far during this pregnancy would increase the chance of her getting at least this far or maybe farther with her next pregnancy.
I'm always going to have small babies, but each consecutive pregnancy should result in a bigger baby because your uterus stretches with every pregnancy. I am a little nervous about having more kids, but other than that, I feel fine. I just feel a little bit more unique.
Molly makes a quick recovery from the C-section, and 12 days later, Hudson is strong enough to leave the hospital.
He turned 4 pounds, and he was maintaining his body temperatures, and we got to take him home. It was amazing.
Today, Molly and Jim are busy and devoted parents.
Hudson is doing very well.
I view Hudson's birth as a miracle. We're so lucky to have him and so lucky he's so healthy. Everything turned out great.
I definitely want to have 2, maybe even 3. I love being a mom. He is definitely the biggest joy in my life, and every moment I'm with him is so special.